Good morning. Good morning. Hello. We are about to start.
Over that thing, people can't see me. I'm too short.
Just a point of information, and any other persons coming, the balcony is also open for seating also. 6th floor. Good morning. This is February the 2nd, 2023. Hearing for the Education, Workforce, and Youth Committee. I am Councilman Robert Stokes, Chairman of the committee. I'd like to introduce the members of this committee. Councilman Bullock from the 9th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Cohen from the 1st District. Council Vice President Middleton from the 6th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Porter from the 10th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Councilman Torrance from the 7th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Also beside me is Councilwoman Odette Ramos, who is the sponsor of this particular resolution. Okay. We have Sophia G. from the mayor's office, Brandon Scott's office. And Tiffany Macklin from President Mosby's office also. First, I'm gonna just read the actual recital. It says, for the purpose of inviting representatives from the Mayor's Office of Employment, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Department of Human Resources, Department of Public Works, Department of Housing and Community Development, Department of Transportation, Department of General Services, the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, and the Baltimore City School System to discuss hiring of Spanish speakers for employment in city government. Before we start, I'm going to pass this mic over to the sponsor of the bill, Councilwoman Odette Ramos, who have a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get started, I just want to explain that we do have simultaneous translation happening. So if, and I'm going to have Yaslin from my office explain for those folks who need to have translation how they can access it. She will explain it in Spanish.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Antes de comenzar, le queremos decir que sí hay servicio de traducción. Si alguien necesita escuchar la audiencia en español, déjame saber. Yo estoy en la parte de atrás del salón y le podemos dar audífonos y conectarlos al Zoom para que pueda escuchar la traducción. Y también habrá interpretación para cuando usted dé su testimonio. Habrá alguien al lado suyo cuando venga a dar su testimonio aquí, por favor de hablar claramente en el micrófono.
Gracias. Thank you, Mr. Chair. What Yaslin was just explaining is that we do have simultaneous translation. So if somebody needs translation from English to Spanish simultaneously, we have a link that folks can log on to be able to hear the translation. And then later during testimony, if someone is testifying in Spanish, we will have translation in English for us. Mr. Chair, I just want to thank you for hosting this hearing today and for my colleagues to spend time with us today on this important issue. We know that our Latino community has grown significantly in our city, and we want to make sure that there is connection to our city government. We know that the statistics are, just using an example, 311 calls, there were, 6,600,000 311 calls in the last 2 years, and only 2,000 of them were in Spanish, were people who were seeking services and spoke Spanish and needed language line. So that says to us that our community is not feeling connected to our government, and we want to have this hearing today to learn more about what our city agencies are doing to make sure that anybody who lives in Baltimore City can access the services that we provide as a city and that they deserve because we all pay taxes. We also want to make sure that we are conscious of the fact that, at least front line, we do need to hire more Spanish speakers and speakers of other languages, because connection to language line, which is super important and has helped us a lot, is not the same as somebody understanding not just the language, but the culture and what somebody might be going through at that specific time. As many of you know, in the agencies, I asked in the budget hearings about the status of hiring, and was surprised to learn that at that time, I think it's probably changed, but at that time, that 911 only had one Spanish speaker as a recipient dispatcher. So when that happens and someone is seeking emergency services and then has to take another minute or two to get connected to language line, that could be somebody's life, right? So this is an emergent issue. We want our Latino community to be connected to government. We want all of our other speakers of other languages to be connected to government, but we also want to make sure that our city government looks like Baltimore, looks like the people who live here. And so I'm just grateful for the opportunity to serve in this position, the first Hispanic elected official in Baltimore City. It's an important role to make sure that all of us have a voice and fight hard for our community, and that's for all of Baltimore. So I'm grateful for this opportunity, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. So we're going to start off with agency reports. The law department favorable, but they do have some written comments. Do you have any additional comments from the law department? Somebody here from?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Sophia from Mayor's Office of Government Relations. The law department stands by its support and approves the bill for reform and legal sufficiency. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Housing and Community Development, we also have some written comments from them. Do you have any comments additional?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Stephanie Murdoch, Director of Legislative Services for the Department of Housing and Community Development. I'm joined here today by Felicia Knight Davis, right behind me. She is our Chief of Human Resources, and Latoya Tisdale in the audience, our Deputy Chief Human Resources. There she is. Okay. I just wanted to say a few things to the committee here. Thank you for having us today. We're pleased to participate in this informational hearing to discuss the hiring of Spanish speakers for employment in city government. While we do not directly require new hires to be proficient in Spanish for all positions, we recognize the value of a workforce that is reflective of the population we seek to serve, including its Hispanic and Latino residents, in order to promote municipal services that are open and accessible to all. DHCD has assessed all internal and external forms, website content, handbooks, policies, and other content accessible to employees, recruits, and constituents, visitors, and others to ensure ADA compliance and to identify those forms and information most important to individuals with limited English proficiency. We also utilize the Neighborly platform, an online application portal, to promote several important programs in multiple languages, including our Community Catalyst grants, our homeownership incentives, our housing preservation programs, housing upgrades to benefit seniors, also known as HUBs, tax sale exemption program, the Emergency Mortgage and Housing Assistance Program, and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, new construction, preservation of existing rental housing. We are also part of a cohort of city agencies identified to create a language access guidance document pursuant to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. We have been working with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs and on the translation of identified vital documents. DHCD has also recently hired a permanent equity coordinator to continue to advance this work. In conclusion, DHCD is supportive of finding ways to recruit Hispanic and Latino peoples into the workplace, break down language barriers, and build trust in this ever-growing community. DHCD defers to the Department of Human Resources in providing further details on best practices to attract and retain quality candidates for employment within the City of Baltimore. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Department of Public Works, favorable. And just to mention the agencies, you don't have to read the whole letter because it's going to be in the record also, but just kind of shorten the time a little bit. So, Ms. Collins, if you have any comments, but we do have comments from Department of Public Works also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Marcia Collins, representing the Department of Public Works. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We have submitted written responses to the bill itself. I will say that we are in the process of looking to hire a liaison who is Spanish speaking so that we can make sure to make those connections. Our most recent workforce development program, Be More Wise, has a whole program to make sure that anyone with English as a second language is not prohibited or cannot fully participate in that effort. And we have always worked closely with MEMA to make sure our materials are translated into multiple languages. We know that there's always more that we can do, and we appreciate learning more at this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm sure Councilman Ramos glad to hear that. Department of Transportation, favorable. Any comments?
Mr. Chair, Liam Davis, Baltimore City Department of Transportation. We stand by our bill report, which is favorable. Specifically for Baltimore City DOT, we acknowledge the importance of hiring more Spanish speakers within the agency, and I can specifically point to within the director's office that those efforts are paying off, specifically within our communications office and in our government affairs and policy team. But we look forward to participating in today's hearing and acknowledge there's room for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Office of Equity and Civil Rights.
Good morning. My mic is stopped by the trash can. but thank you. Good morning. I'm Dana Peterson Moore. I am thank you so much. The Director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, and I'm also the city's Chief Equity Officer. We have not done a bill report. I will submit after the hearing. I very much wanted to hear everyone's comments before submitting something in writing, and that's because as the city's Chief Equity Officer, we want to hear what everyone has to say and how everyone feels and is impacted, and then I'll do the report. But as for the bill, we are in support of the bill. We are very much acutely aware of the concerns. We provided the headsets for today. The headsets came from our experience in Civil Rights Week when we did what I think is the first agency ever to do a panel discussion 100% in Spanish, and the translation was from Spanish to English, and Councilwoman Odette Ramos participated in that. We are very, very thankful for that. We are a small agency. We're tiny, and I say mighty. Mm-hmm. We have a large footprint. We just have 17, I think we went to 19 people on Monday to do the work to really support civil rights initiatives and concerns and equity in the whole city. As small as we are, we have 4 persons who are 100% fluent in Spanish, and we're fortunate in that. We need more. In talking with the team, we need to specifically hire Spanish speakers for those that are working in the Police Accountability Division, the Community Relations Commission Division, as well as the Wage Division. We're actually going on site and speaking with people that are native Spanish speakers to address their concerns. Currently, obviously we have people within the office that will do the translations and communications, which is very fortunate for us. We also use Language Line. We have a contract for ASL interpretation, which that cannot be missed, that we as a city have we have a large number of people that are hearing impaired and need the American Sign Language interpretation. We work closely with MEMA, and we'll continue to do that, and we have contracts for other language interpreters. So we're in support. We're very happy that this is processing forward, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, and just comments, you said you only had 4 people. You know, it's called budget time.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. The Mayor's Office of Employment Development, favorable, any comments?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and other members of the council. My name is Matt Garvin. I am the Deputy Director and Chief of Staff of the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. We are in support of this bill. We provided written testimony, and we stand by that testimony. Just to say a few comments, we have been very intentional in increasing the number of individuals that speak both Spanish and English at MOED. Specifically, since our last budget hearing last year, we've increased staff by 2. We have a mobile career navigator, which we think is very important. This individual is able to go out into the community, work with our various partners. Again, at MOED, we are an agency that really prides itself on working towards economic justice and equity, and so we know it is important to have representation of all different people from different backgrounds, specifically those who have been historically and systemically disadvantaged. We know how important representation is, and we will continue to push to have more representation from different communities at MOED. So thank you for allowing us to be a part of this hearing.
Thank you, Department of Human Resources. We do have written testimony also, but any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, honorable committee members. We stand by our bill report, and also would just like to say that if we are to, Quentin Herbert, Director of Human Resources. For us to move the needle, it's going to require diverse and non-traditional recruitment methods. We know that 72% of Spanish speakers in the United States own at least one smart device, and 64% of Hispanics aged 35 to 49 use tablet devices daily. In the Department of Human Resources, we have been leveraging that technology to try to move the needle. There are over 100 specialized groups in LinkedIn that will assist in identifying Spanish-speaking candidates. DHR has recently hired a Spanish-speaking employee in our Office of Recruitment to aid us in that outreach efforts. We routinely partner with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development for our outreach strategies and quarterly recruitment events. And also would just like to highlight and lift up that in December, we overhauled our recruitment portal, and there are instructions on how to apply for city employment in both Spanish and English videos that walk potential candidates through that application process, and those again are in both English and Spanish. So we support the best practices to better engage our Spanish-speaking citizens, and I agree that our workforce should be reflective of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Recreation and Parks, we do have written comments also.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm Jenny Morgan. I'm the Legislative Liaison with Baltimore City Rec and Parks. We stand by our report. Currently, we have 4 front-facing Spanish-speaking employees that deal directly with the community. Our Human Resources Department is working to increase the number of people that come in. We've also implemented a pay structure where a bilingual candidate would receive additional compensation above a normal person in that job spec. We're trying to make sure that the bulk of our documents are bilingual. Before I forget, my colleague Israel Nunez is here and is available to answer any questions. He's working on a lot of those initiatives with our administration.
Thank you. Department of General Services, favorable. Any comments? We do have written comments from Department of General Services also.
Good morning, Chairman Stokes and council members. My name is Berke Attila. I'm the Director of Department of General Services. Today, I'm joined here with my Chief of HR, Catherine Burns. And Deputy Chief, Ms. Erica Rivas, with me today, and then we stand by the report, and then we're very excited to learn more and then do more. And we're here to answer any of your questions. One of the things that we're working with Director Herbert's team to understand the difference between the groundwater, the lake, and the pool ideas of if we're looking at our applicants and then we're failing to hire more diverse candidates, we're now pushing our efforts to understand if our outreach to bring the applicants to the table needs to be increased so that we can increase our probability in hiring of those diverse candidates into those jobs. So it's not the jobs itself and who we hire, but where we try to find them. So I'm really glad to hear the efforts here, and we're ready to answer if you have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Baltimore City Public Schools, we do have written comments, written letter. Do you have any comments?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of the council. My name is Emily Nielsen. I'm the Chief Human Capital Officer at City Schools. We stand by our written statement that we provided, and just to elaborate a little bit, as we've seen a growing Hispanic and Latino population in the city, we have seen it among our students and families at City Schools. Historically, City Schools has worked very hard to recruit Spanish-speaking teachers to serve in Spanish positions as well as English as a second language. We are continuing to expand these efforts. We're actually planning for a trip to Puerto Rico next month to recruit more teachers and administrators. We're really looking forward to that. It's been a successful trip the last few years. As well as recruiting at Hispanic serving institutions of higher education and increasing the social media and other recruitment efforts that we're doing for teachers. More recently, we've been expanding how we can recruit more Spanish-speaking frontline staff. We still have quite a bit of work to do. We need to get our applications Spanish. We need to have more of our communication and promotional materials in Spanish. But City Schools stands ready to work with the city government in increasing the Spanish-speaking staff that we have at City Schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we start, I just want to say that we have a growing Latino community here in Baltimore City, and I know most of my colleagues here, they can know that's happening, so I really truly support this. It's long overdue. I know my colleague, Councilwoman Odette Ramos, and my district really have an overflow. Even I think Councilwoman Porter and Councilman Z. Cohen, that really has a lot of Latino community, so I truly support this. This should have happened a long time ago, but it's happening now. I'm glad to hear that DPW is going to be hiring liaison person to communicate with the Latino community. I think that's great. So we are going to now go to our questions. And oh, I'm sorry. Could you identify that?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I left you out, didn't I? I apologize. Mayor's Office of Internal Affairs.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I am Catalina Rodriguez Lima. I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, commonly known as MIMA. We stand by our report, and I just want to take a minute to thank Councilwoman Romans for elevating the issue of language barriers. We at MIMA are very committed to ensuring that all limited English proficient residents, or LEPs, have access to city resources. We're happy to be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to start taking questions from committee members, and my mom always taught me that ladies come first. So our first questions will go over to our Vice President of the City Council, Councilwoman Sharon Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things. I just want to, you were kind of naming areas that have a strong Latino population.
Well, I apologize.
But I do want to recognize that in the Northwest area that I represent and the 5th District, Upper Park Heights has a very high Latino population, and Southern Park Heights, it's a growing population of beginning homeowners and so on. So really appreciative of that. And then I just want to give a shout out to Catalina Rodriguez, which really has kind of been around as long as I have. And Catalina was basically one of the first people that I know, and there were times that she was really out there by herself, holding up the Latino community and just being a strong advocate. And a number of the things that you already see in place, I really give credit to Catalina. So thank you for continuing to hold strong and continuing to do your public service and showing and guiding that footprint. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a few questions related to particularly Baltimore City Public Schools and also the Department of Housing as well. One of the key issues that a few of my constituents have brought up, particular to Baltimore City Public Schools, is I'm trying to think of the word, the ESOL programs. We've seen that many of them are at a foundation level. I'm wondering how we can get them to the next level. We're seeing that some of these students are still having learning difficulties along with the ESOL program in Baltimore City Public School curriculum. Can you speak to how we're advancing ESOL programs so that it's not only pertinent to students in their current learning environment, but as they matriculate through K through 8, and then to high school, and then also if they are integrated into the school settings kind of mid-year? Those are some of the issues that we've been hearing.
Unfortunately, although I started my career as a teacher, I'm not currently working on our ESOL program on the academic team, so I'd love to follow up with my colleagues there and get you more information about that. I know they are working very hard to elaborate our programming for our students who speak a language other than English at home.
I appreciate that. And not also, if we can add to that data request, what the mid-year transition looks like for ESOL students. One of my particular high schools, New Era Academy, we have a lot of ESOL students that are transitioning mid-year into New Era Academy, and they're still experiencing academic difficulties related to language that I really want to kind of head them in once they get in so that they're not matriculating through high school with still those learning disadvantages in relation to other students as well. So thank you for that.
Councilwoman, can you state your request one more time?
Yes,
please?
sir. So if we can have in from Baltimore City Public Schools, I'm formally requesting data on the ESOL programs. Not only just the description of the programs, but also the transition of mid-year students into Baltimore City Public Schools.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, sir.
No,
One
go
more
ahead.
question. Okay.
Sure.
I did have another question related to the Department of Housing. One of the other issues that we are seeing across the city is persons that don't have English as their first language. We're seeing, they're having issues related to finding housing, keeping housing, but then also having that housing exude a quality of life that every citizen is meant to have in the city of Baltimore, that we fight on the council to have in the city of Baltimore. So Stephanie, can you talk to me about how you all are performing outreach to immigrant populations so that they can have stable housing?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair and Councilwoman and members of the committee. Stephanie Murdoch, Director of Legislative Services. I think that would be more of a question for HABC, for the Housing Authority when it comes to supportive housing, or the Mayor's Office of Children, Family and Success. DHCD doesn't do that type of outreach as far as, putting individuals into, housing.
And let me just reframe my question. It wasn't necessarily putting individuals into supporting housing. It was merely asking the question about rights, tenant rights and renters' rights for particular individuals that do not have English as their first language. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, certainly. We work with a number of nonprofits that help individuals facing eviction, Public Justice Center, just to name one of them, MVL, Maryland Lawyers. I'm not sure about their capacity to address non-English speakers and what their staffing looks like, but that's something I can follow up on.
I wonder if it can be a oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was going to say a collaboration between housing and MEMA, because those are some of the issues, and also the Office of Equity as well. I wonder if there can be some sort of partnership and collaboration there.
Thank you, Councilwoman Porter. Actually, there's already an existing partnership that started during the pandemic when we noticed that our systems were not equipped to serve people who can speak English. So the Department of Housing actually subcontracted with Public Justice Center, and there is Spanish-speaking abilities. In addition to that, what the city did in MOCFS is subcontract with Southeast CDC, Latino Economic Development Center, and CASA, knowing that our systems are not necessarily available in multiple languages, and even if they are, they're difficult to navigate. So these three nonprofit organizations essentially have workers on the ground helping with the eviction prevention process for residents in the city of Baltimore. Sometimes subcontracting with nonprofits is the most effective way to serve a population that is often afraid of government, but also has difficulties navigating systems that are not necessarily located in one part of government.
Is there any data available that the council? Is there any data available that the council can review to the success of those particular programs?
Yes, I believe MOCFS manages the program and should have that data. And by the way, we are part of a coalition of service providers along with the ones mentioned and MOCFS, and we meet on a monthly basis to address any issues from the nonprofit organizations serving those residents.
Mr. Chair, can I make that a formal request, please?
Yeah, I would give a ask. Can you go ahead and?
Yes, if we can request that formal data related to the success of the particular programs between the partnership of housing and MEMA. Thank you. And
Dana Moore, the Office of Equity and Civil Rights has a fluent Spanish speaker who's dedicated to the Community Relations Commission. And we also have a keen interest in making sure that housing is accessible. We are ready to help anyone who has challenges. We will enforce the law, we will give guidance, and we will do so in fluent Spanish.
And Director Moore, do we have immigrant attorneys within the Office of Equity that are city-paid employees that are able to be deployed in these types of situations?
We don't have immigrant attorneys, and just going back to the life that I had before I became member of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, I don't think the law department has immigrant attorneys either. It's a real specialty, and you know, even within some of our major law firms, there are not attorneys that provide that service, but there are private, you know, nonprofits that will provide that support.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilman Torrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my comments are, mine are just comments.
Councilman, can you put the mic up a little closer so we can?
I'm getting there.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure, I just want to lift this up and say thank you to Councilwoman Ramos as well as MEMA for their hard work. One of the things I do know from working at city schools, having our immigrant population trust us is the hardest part. And one of my requests is, what are some policy things that we can do as a council to support not only the trust that we have in the service providers who have that trust, to actually help with our systems? Because one of the things I've learned is that those service providers are more important than our systems changing, rather than us adapting with the service providers to reach the people. So I just want to know, from your expertise as agencies, how we can use those small nonprofits and organizations to better do outreach, but also build trust so that we can put people in city government that also speak the language and look like our residents, but also ensure that we are inclusive in showing it as well. So that's it. I'm gonna lift that up, but make that as a data request. Give us some policy changes that we can make as an institution to aid you in your work.
And I'm happy to answer with an example. We in the city of Baltimore have an executive order that basically prohibits city employees, including police officers, from asking about immigrant status or citizenship. But a couple years ago, we went even further during the Trump administration when they were threatening us with taking federal funds away if we did not ask for immigrant status. We actually were able to get a policy within the police department that prohibits officers for asking about immigrant status, but more importantly, if there is a match in the public safety database and ICE is actually requesting that the officer retains that person, we will not comply, and we will instead contact the supervisor and let the person go. Building trust within the institutions that we represent is critical so that people can trust us and can access those services. Now, there is a real confusion on what's local, what's state, and what's federal, and sometimes that's challenging to overcome. Our folks do not speak English, have challenges navigating systems, and to ask from them to know which agency belongs to which government is a lot. And that's why last year we launched an initiative called the Baltimore New American Access Coalition, which is a case management program of approximately 12 benefit navigators that will help immigrants and refugees access local and state and federal aid in health and social services.
That's your one question, Council? Go ahead.
May I add just a couple thoughts? That's okay. A few years ago, the Baltimore City Law Department actually filed legal action against the Trump administration to make sure that there was no ban or prohibition in the city of Baltimore providing services to persons that were not United States citizens, and I don't recall the name of that litigation, but it was really, really important, and it preserved our right as a city to provide those services. We are, I believe, also still, Catalina, have the designation as a welcoming city, which means that we welcome everyone into our city, and I think that's reflected in the great diversity. Baltimore is like a quilt. There are so many different ethnicities and languages that are spoken here. I live in Charles Village. It is not at all unusual to walk, Councilwoman Ramos, along the 3100 block of St. Paul Street and hear Mandarin Chinese, Spanish, Italian, German, French. It's very, very culturally rich in that way. But when you're talking about trust, we will build trust with all actors within the city, not by what we say, but by what we do. And we can pass legislation, we can enact ordinances, we can do all things that mandate certain behaviors, but we have to be in our hearts willing to act in a way that shows we're worthy of trust. And we have to do that always, and it's hard, but it's also easy. We walk in our truth, we walk in our faith, we walk in what we say were our values. We also need to identify trusted actors that already exist and ask them to please partner with us and to do this walk with us and to do this work with us. And that's how we will more expediently reach those levels of trust that we need. You know, it's kind of hard, but I think every interaction is going to either build on the trust that we're trying to create or it's going to take it away. So all of us as agencies and elected officials, and we always have to be aware that if you didn't know it before, you know last week, there's always someone watching. There's always an eye on our actions. There's always someone observing how we do, and so we must always be acting in a way that is deserving of trust. End of lecture.
Councilman Bullock and then Councilman Z. Cohen.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Ramos. Not so much of a question, but just more of a comment. Again, just reflecting what my colleagues have already mentioned is so important. Again, just the diversity of language speakers outside of English all around the city, and just us really being intentional really about what's going to happen not only now but in the future of our city. I know we've had conversations around where the growth of our city is going to be, and if you look at the last census data figures, we realize that we've lost significant population, but where we're growing are folks who are speaking different languages, particularly in the Hispanic Latino community. So again, it's really critical for us as it relates to the future of our city, the workforce, our educational pipeline, career readiness, and just service delivery in our city. So I'm so happy that we're having this hearing today. We need to be doing more of this in the future, so thank you all.
Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsor for your leadership on this issue. You know, I am proud of some of the work our council has historically done in partnership, both with MEMA and with community. In the previous council, when President Trump put us on a list of 10 cities that were endangered of losing Department of Homeland Security funding, we reaffirmed our status as a welcoming city. We passed a resolution. We collaboratively started a legal defense fund, Safe City Baltimore. And so it is such an important issue. And to me, it's about how do we shift our mindset and see this community as the asset that it truly is. And I would just lift up groups that are here like Nuestras Raíces, Comité Latina, Southeast CDC, Casa de Maryland, Esperanza Center, as really being the backbone and bolstering the effort in our communities. And I would just say they need funding. That's my comment. I think, to me, how do we build trust? We continue to have conversation, but money matters, and investing directly into those organizations that are doing the work is extremely important. My question is for the school system. I know that in prior years and currently there was a big push among a group called Somos, Students Organizing for a Multicultural Society, to integrate more of our selective high schools through the standpoint of more English language learning students being there, right? Historically, we know that ELL students have been tracked usually into Digital Harbor High School and Patterson High School. That's a broad sweeping generalization, but if you look at the data, it's mostly true. And so there was a big push to get young folks who are Spanish speaking or non-English speaking into City, Poly, Western, BSA, all of the more selective schools, knowing that the outcomes could be dramatically better from an academic standpoint if we have a more integrated population within our schools. It seems like that effort had a lot of momentum and then has sort of faltered. I heard at City there's only half an ESOL teacher. And so I'm curious from City schools where we are in terms of making sure that all of our schools, but particularly our more selective high schools, have the infrastructure to support our English language learning students. Because just from a equity and civil rights perspective, if we aren't welcoming young people in as a city, we know they're not gonna open the door and go there. So I'm curious just to hear kind of from City schools on where we are in that effort.
I can't speak with specifics to the efforts that our schools team is getting to, or our enrollment team to direct students. We can get more information for you on that. I can say that the human capital team is working hard to make sure that when principals want to staff an ESOL position, that they have a great slate of candidates to select from so that they're not having to keep a position open due to lack of candidates. So that's how human capital has been supporting having those programs at the schools.
I'm gonna make a data request if that's okay. If you could provide the committee with a breakdown of how many ESOL teachers specifically are at all the different high schools in the city, that would be really helpful. And then sort of the follow on to that is just knowing that there aren't enough, or assuming that there are not enough at certain high schools, and that we see huge concentrations of Spanish-speaking kids in certain high schools. What are we as a district doing to intentionally break that up and have a more integrated population?
We can get more information for you from our school team for that. Thank you.
That would be great, and I'll come back on the second
Request?
round of questions.
You got your request?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Odette Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for really great questions. And I'm grateful that we're focusing on this issue. I have a couple of things. I did invite Director Allen from 311. I think she's online. During budget hearings, we had asked one of the things that would help to keep our community connected to government and services is to make sure that there is a 311 app that's in Spanish. And so she had let us know that they are working on it, and I wondered if there was an update. Thanks, Director, for joining us today.
You're welcome, and thank you all for allowing me to join you virtually. I'm Lisa Allen, the Call Center Director for 311 under BCIT, and I'd like everyone to know that BCI strongly supports this bill, and we have had several conversations with Councilman Ramos on how to boost the recruitment process of reaching out to have applicants that are bilingual, not only in Spanish, but in other languages as well. In terms of the app, we are still working with the developer, who is Salesforce, to translate the mobile app in Spanish. One of the challenges that has happened through us working with him to develop that, if you remember in the council meeting, we were hoping to be one of the beta testing sites. They are testing the app. They're testing it right now in Spanish in Dallas and DC. But where they are is it's just available on a couple of service requests through the console. And when I say the console, that means the CRM tool that the agent uses to put the request in. The challenges they are having, which seem, we're going to continue to work with them, but Google Translate doesn't really translate in a way that really follows the workflow to make sure that we can test it, to make sure things are correct and that we're not saying things, for example, that are translating that's not a true translation or even sometimes offensive. So to basically answer your question, they still are testing. We may look at other alternatives, but we are working with Salesforce to help them push that through and figure out the workflows and how to get that translated correctly. I will keep the council and Councilwoman Ramos up to date on the mobile app. We also are introducing a chat bot this year, which does have the ability to translate into Spanish, and that will be a lot easier because on the chatbot we won't on an app either have all of our services available, so it's more cut and dry. You're really just chatting like you're talking to people, which would also expand later on down the road into texting to 311 agents. So we will continue to work with our developer and keep you up to date on how we can transition what they're doing and learning to the mobile app as soon as we get some more information.
So do you expect end of 2023? What is the time frame we can look at? Middle of 2023?
I would say by the end of 2023, if we haven't figured something out, we will start to look at other alternatives.
Well, I think you'll know. I will come back to you during budget season to ask. So hopefully, if not sooner, so hopefully we get a better update because again, the connection to government is extremely important for our community. And then I also want to acknowledge that the health department isn't here, but the health department during COVID recognized a significant need in our community and hired so many community health workers that are Latino health workers that are still employed. So that is extremely important. Recognizing that. I will just pivot to one other thing. This hearing is the first of its kind in terms of offering translation services, and this will not be the last. So and I'm grateful to Jose and the Council President's office to agree to do this way and then to put money in the budget for future hearings. I think that's really important. But I also want to emphasize to the agencies, your public meetings have to have these translation services. DOT had a public meeting in our district. The survey that was sent out about how you access was in English, and yet there could have been a Spanish speaker there. So we have to figure out the best way when there are public meetings that government sets up to make sure, I mean, you already make sure that there's a way if people are needing accessible, you know, access in person, wheelchair, or, you know, or signing if somebody needs it. But we need to have the option if people need translation services during public meetings that they are provided. And it's great to have meetings that are just specific to the Latino community, but I do think that when we have public meetings, we need to be able to have these services. So I don't know if any of the agencies want to comment on that. Do you want to say something about that?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. I absolutely agree with you. We at MEMA, unfortunately, do not manage the subcontracting of on-site interpreters, oral translation, due to costs. It is very expensive, as you know. On-site interpretation can range anywhere between $70 to $90 with a 2-hour minimum, and with 2 interpreters, so a session of 2 hours could potentially cost $500. In the limited resources that we have prioritized for telephonic interpretation and translation of vital documents. That is not to say that in the future we would not consider on-site interpretation as part of our budget as we advocate for funding increases. But for now, it's really challenging for us to cover costs of that nature. And we ask city agencies to assess their public hearings and determine and use their own budgets within professional services to pay for those services. We do help the agencies connect with the company, which is under a master blanket contract account with the state. So they don't even have to do a bidding or procurement processes. We have expertise on that.
Yeah, one of the things that we had, in the process of doing this hearing, you know, realized that it's currently not in the agency's budgets for these services. There's a lot in their budgets in terms of being able to translate documents and all of that. So I would encourage, and have already started speaking with the finance, to be able to get at least some dollars for interpretation services for our agencies for their public meetings.
The one thing we have done over the last few years was centralize the expenses for telephonic interpretation and translation of documents. Prior to MEMA, each agency had to have its own procurement process, which was a logistical nightmare. And when an agency did not pay the bill, all the agency's accounts were shut down. So we have centralized expenses for telephonic interpretation and translation of documents for agencies that want to access those resources. On-site interpretation is a different animal that we're still trying to determine what is our role given its cost.
Yeah, well, let's work on that because I think that's really critical. Director Moore, did you have more to say about that?
Sure. I support the idea. I think that it is going to really amplify us as an accessible, equitable city. And I think every agency has a line for professional services. And we all should be thinking that within the professional services line that we include funds, understand that that could include funding for on-site translation during hearings. Not every agency has a public hearing, not even every year, but some do. DPW does, HCD does, my office, we're gonna be doing more. Just so that's a footnote. But it's not hard to get those services. You just have to think ahead about where you're going and who your audience might be and make it available.
Mm-hmm. And then just my last comment here to my colleagues, one of the things that MEMA was hopefully starting to work on with us is to train us and our staff on Language Line so that if somebody who is Spanish speaking calls your offices and many of your staffs actually ask Yaslin for help right now. So, and she's happy to do that, but she can't do that for everybody. So, you know, that's one thing that we'll be working on with the Council President's office. So your staffs can also, you know, be a part of those conversations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you real quick. I have a request. Can we get a list from every agency who don't or who have liaisons to communicate with our Latino and Spanish community? Can we get that request from the mayor's office? Thank you. Councilwoman Middleton.
Thank you again, Councilwoman Ramos. This is really good information, and my colleagues for your questions. And my colleague, Felicia Porter, and Councilman Cohen, you know, had raised some really important questions pertaining to high school. And, you know, I was sitting here thinking, I know I have a bill in recess, Mr. Chair, in your committee on the school system and financial literacy that I plan to bring back sometime this year. And also just, and I want to thank the agencies for really stepping up and being proactive. But yesterday, as we all, most of us heard, listening to our governor's address and talking about public service and understanding the importance on really how, trying to figure out how to educate and reach our young people, particularly in high school, and getting them prepared for independent living, and how important the course that I'm trying to help the school system to understand that we need a independent elective course for high school students, independent living. Our surrounding counties, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, they have electives for teaching financial literacy. All that is a part of helping our young people when they graduate from high school to understand the importance of volunteering, as we have the shortage of translation. There's so many things that we need help with as far as volunteering. It's just really important that they try to go back to the table and have this elective ready for high school students of all races and ethnicities to really be a part of just trying to figure out so they can be, it's a part of being accepted in the community. It's a part of learning how to bank, how to just live independently, get your own apartment, all these things. Everything that we've talked about today has been a connection. So I'm requesting, when I do call the school system back, please have prepared what you have done through, with our students through COVID. What, because we haven't had this hearing in a while. And my recollection from the last hearing, it was very minimal things like just field trips and stuff. We need a concrete course in high school that has all of these connections, because we don't, it's one of the reasons our students are being left behind. And there's so many things that are right in our faces that we can do that doesn't necessarily need a real big budget. It's just sitting down at the table and trying to figure this out and having these extra opportunities for our young people, particularly our people that are graduating from high school, to really be a part of helping. Did you want to comment?
Real quick, can you tell us what your request is? Because it.
Well, I'm going to meet with Marguerite.
Oh, this is for your hearing?
To schedule the
Okay, all right.
hearing. But I think that all of this is somewhat a connection. It's a big connection with trying to create that financial literacy course. Just because it's called financial literacy, doesn't mean that it's just that one piece, because finances is connected to everything that we do. Would you like to comment?
Okay, real quick, is this has to do with your hearing on your literacy? Because if we can do.
I'm just mentioning that it's giving me opportunity to find a date, to meet with you to find a date to reschedule that.
We can do that.
But I also would, if the school system representative can comment just on something that everything that I just mentioned.
Good morning, Councilwoman. Melissa Broom, Legislative Director for City Schools. It's good to be here and see you. I think the best thing to do would be if we could talk with you potentially offline about financial literacy specifically. I don't know if you're aware of the state superintendent's recent briefing to the Maryland General Assembly about this topic in particular, and how his recommendation is to have financial literacy embedded in curriculum versus having a specific course. This is a very hot topic right now in the General Assembly, so I would like we could share information with you about that and what that looks like at city schools, because we are embedding those topics throughout the curriculum. But I also hear you sharing things that are not necessarily financial literacy specific, like what you were talking about with volunteering and other more ways to create connections. So I just want to better understand what you need from us and what we can provide so that we're getting you the best answers.
Okay. I just want you to understand that that is connected to what we're talking about today. And it sounds like to me that you also should be prepared to give the council an update on these latest findings of what you just mentioned about financial literacy.
And I can also get that to you like by email ASAP, and then we can decide what bigger conversation you want to have here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Real quick, we're gonna the interpreter is here only till 12 noon, and people have been waiting. We have 19 speakers that want to speak, so we want to make sure that those ones that need the interpreter interpret what they're saying before the interpreter leave, be able to speak, and it will allow you 2 minutes. And if you hear me say 30 seconds, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just letting you know you have 30 seconds left. So. You go.
The first three speakers are, I'm going to spell your name. The first speaker is Rocio, last Masset. After him or her is Melissa Ramos, and then Nicole Torres. The first three speakers.
And if you can step up to the mic and identify yourself also, thank you.
I think the person that was in the list after me, her name was Macrina Galvez. She only speaks Spanish, and I think she was after me in the list, isn't it? Anyway, so thank you. Okay. So my name is Rocio Masset, and I'm the co-founder of an organization called Bridging Maryland, Uniendo a Maryland. But I'm here not to speak in behalf of any organization. I'm here to provide my personal testimony. In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic erupted, everything entered in a state of emergency. In this state of emergency, everyone, organizations and government, were exceeded in their capacity. And this is where the city, I think, demonstrated its interest in directly supported its limited English community. I will speak in particular of the eviction prevention program in which I participated as a case manager. The statistics of the first months in which the funds began to be disbursed for the housing stability showed that less than 1% of applicants for this program were residents whose language was other than English, 1%. That is, given this, and thanks to the efforts of MIMA, and particularly Catalina, the city assigned grants to different nonprofit organizations in order to access limited English proficiency residents. The intention was for these nonprofit organizations to urgently provide services that our government has the obligation to provide its residents. Nonprofit organizations such as Southeast CDC, LEDC, and CASA managed to provide access to hundreds of limited English proficiency the vast majority Spanish-speaking, but they also managed to reach
30
people that
seconds.
spoke Mandarin, Korean, and Urdu. The work of the nonprofit organizations met an economic spill of more than $1.5 million, funds that without a doubt would not have been distributed due to the lack of access to languages other than English by government agencies. Without MIMA's efforts to access resources for limited English proficiency residents, this would not have been achieved. However, there's still much to do. Now that we have verified that by breaking down the language barrier, our communities can access services, it is my wish that there is a systems change in which from the same government agencies and not from nonprofit organizations or communities can access the government programs and services in their own language. Again, I appreciate the efforts of the Mayor and MIMA. Since the pandemic and until today, they have shown their desire to support us. Thank you, we're in the right track, but let's keep working on this. Here is the question.
Can you
How
wrap
can
that
we,
up, please?
as residents of the city, support this change? Because we want to be part of the change. Nothing about us without us. Include us in these changes, please.
Do you like to submit that for a written testimony also?
I haven't, I can email it.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
It's my understanding that Melissa Ramos and Nicole Torres is not in the meeting. So the next two speakers will be Wendy, last name Briones, and Yolanda Martinez.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Yolanda Martínez. Estoy aquí para hablar de la comunidad, apoyar a los bilingües.
You can take your mask off if you like to, so we can hear a little clear.
Hello, my name is Yolanda
Martínez.
Martinez, and I'm here to support the community, the bilingual community.
Porque necesitamos traductores en los hospitales, en las escuelas, en las clínicas y en varias organizaciones.
Because we need translators at the hospitals, schools, clinics.
En las oficinas de estampillas de comidas, de seguros médicos, donde van las personas a renovar sus estampillas de comidas.
And anywhere around the food stamps offices, all the places where all the kids are going for insurance and what they get.
En las oficinas de Social Security, en la North Avenue, he visto varias ocasiones que personas por no hablar en inglés es un poco difícil para ellos y no poderse comunicar.
And all the offices for Social Security services, it's difficult for them. I've seen people that it's so difficult to get the process done because they cannot communicate well.
Como en las oficinas de policías, bomberos y otros lugares.
Police, firefighters, other places.
Porque las personas que hablan español no se pueden comunicar en inglés por diferentes casos que no tienen miedo y por eso no hablan porque no saben hablar inglés.
And they cannot communicate because they are scared and they don't communicate well because they don't know how to speak English.
Necesitamos a los bilingües y que nos sigan apoyando para seguir los traductores y ellos nos puedan ayudar.
We need bilingual people because they need their support, they need the contact with the community, and we need to get this line done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, the translator, anyone that comes up that want to have their written testimony sent to this committee, can you make sure we get it also?
Okay, thank you.
Buenos días, gracias por la oportunidad que me dieron de expresar el problema que he visto hasta el día de hoy que se ha estado dando.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express the problem that we are
Could you-
having here.
Could she identify herself also?
I'm sorry.
Her name? Name.
Tu nombre, por favor.
Sandy Ramos.
Sandy Ramos.
Sí. Nos gustaría tener más representantes latinos, tanto como organizaciones, empresas públicas y privadas que nos puedan representar a nosotros, ya que no sabemos hablar el idioma inglés.
We would like to have more representatives as enterprises, community, at level community, because we don't know how to speak English.
Nos gustaría que haya personal bilingüe en emergencias como 911, hospitales públicos que nos puedan representar a nosotros.
We would like to have more representatives, people who could speak English at the offices, who can speak for us.
También que haya traductores que sean hispanos, que sepan lo que nosotros en verdad queremos decir cuando estamos siendo traducidos.
Spanish speakers who are the same culture as we are, because they need to understand what we need to communicate, what we feel to communicate.
Que todo documento que nos den a firmar sea traducido de español a inglés, ya que normalmente solo nos dan traducido a inglés y nosotros que no hablamos español no sabemos lo que quiere decir ahí, aunque nos digan qué es lo que está diciendo.
We need that every document should be translated from English to Spanish, from Spanish to English, because even if they say what it reads there, we don't understand really the content of it. So it's necessary to have the whole English-Spanish translation.
Es mi problemática porque ahora mismo estoy pasando un problema de que yo firmé un documento solo traducido a inglés. Se me dijo que lo que decía ahí, pero puede decir otra cosa que yo no entienda.
This is exactly the problem that I'm going through, because I signed a document that was in English. They told me that what it says there, okay, I signed it, and now I couldn't understand it, but I didn't read the translation.
Podemos firmar cualquier sentencia y no nos podemos dar cuenta qué es lo que estamos firmando.
We could be signing any resolution that could be something totally different what we expected to be signing.
Lo otro también es de que hayan maestros bilingües que hablen español también en las secundarias. Patterson High School necesita más maestros que sean bilingües.
We also need bilingual teachers. We need teachers who speak Spanish, because we need at high school.
Patterson High School.
Patterson High School. We need more teachers, bilingual teachers there.
Can we wrap that up? We have 18 more people want to speak. So we want to give everybody a chance.
Ahora mismo tengo mi hija que se está graduando de 12 en Patterson High School. Ella está preocupada porque no sabe hablar inglés y va al college, no sabe a expresarse.
Right now I have the problem of my daughter at that high school, and she cannot speak English, and she doesn't know, she's disoriented on going to college without speaking English.
Thank you. Can you actually those additional concerns you had, you can make sure you email them, so anything that needs to go over to the school system, we make sure they can address those issues. Thank you.
Okay, gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Wendy Briones. Is Wendy in the meeting? Next is going to be Macrina Galvez.
Hola,
Hola, mi
Habla
nombre es,
fuerte.
mi
Y
nombre
si
es
quieres, quítate
Macrina.
la mascarilla.
No, está bien.
Gracias. ¿No?
Mi nombre es Macrina.
My name is Matrina.
Yo soy una de familia que también estoy aquí porque siempre he tenido
I'm here
mucho
because I've
problemas
always been
en
having
oficinas
problems at the
del
offices,
gobierno
at
porque
government
no tienen
offices,
gente que hable español.
because they don't have people who speak
Para las
Spanish.
estampillas de comida he sido
For food
ido
stamps,
muchos años a la oficina de Dunbar. Cada vez que
I've
voy,
been going all the way
duro
there
todo
several
el día
times. I
sentada
stay
sin
there
nadie
sitting
me
with,
atienda ni que me
without
explique
anybody helping me, explaining me,
y no-
nothing.
Y no soy solo yo, somos
not only
muchas
me.
familias que pasamos ahí sentada todo el
There's a
día.
lot of people there
que nadie
sitting
nos
all day long without receiving any support
Porque allí hablan puro inglés
because they only speak English there,
y es lo mismo en la oficina de la Broadway Street.
and it's the
Muchas
same on the
familias
Broadway
pasamos-
Street.
Muchas familias pasamos ahí sentados todo el día.
Many people stay there sitting all day long.
Yo tengo un problema en mi caso.
I have a specific problem for my case that they have not solved for many
habla
years
español.
because I don't know who speaks Spanish there.
Ellos saben que mi caso está en español.
They
y me
know
mandan
that my
carta
case is
en
in
inglés
Spanish,
como esta.
and they send me,
Y
continue
me llega-
sending me
yo no sé
letters
nada
in
de
English.
inglés.
I
Y
have
como
no
ahora aquí
idea.
tengo la carta,
I have this
y yo
letter,
no
for
sé leer
example,
qué es lo que dice.
then I don't know what
Y me
exactly
cuesta buscar
says
a
here.
alguien que me lea esta carta.
I cannot find anybody who could help me reading this letter.
Me perdí una ayuda de emergencia que daron porque me mandan los papeles en
I
inglés.
missed a support that they sent me because I couldn't read the
Por
documents.
favor, les pido que contraten
Could you
gente en
please,
español.
I really ask you
Y
to
también quiero
hire
decirle
people
que
who
me
speak
siento muy
Spanish.
contenta cuando en
I'm really
oficina
happy
hablan español.
when somebody is speaking Spanish at the office.
Thank
Yo
you.
tuve una
Gracias.
ayuda del Renta Gracia que tenía gente en español atendiendo en oficinas que no eran del gobierno.
I got some support from the office, but they were not from the government. Mhm. Okay, gracias.
Ms. Moore, you want to comment? Here you go.
Thank you. I think it would be very, very helpful to have her name and contact information so that we can follow up today, perhaps even right now.
Sería muy bueno tener su nombre y su dirección, toda su información de contacto para poder comunicarnos con usted.
If I
Claro
can-
que sí.
If I can ask members of my team, either Carrie or Missy, to get the phone number of the lady.
Sí, el número de teléfono especialmente.
And I just want to point something out. A lot of what I'm hearing are social and public benefits in DHS. And I just want to clarify that for the purposes of language access, we cover only the city. And it's a real challenge because these systems are not designed for them. We don't expect our community to know which service belongs to which type of government. It's a lot to ask from them. But that's why we established BNAC, which is a Benefit Navigator program, which we will enroll you today. And then for the other lady who mentioned a daughter not speaking English, we continue to have the Mayor Scholars Program, which is available for any graduate from the city of Baltimore, regardless of language, which means that if your daughter does not speak English, she can continue to learn English at Baltimore City Community College, and more importantly, is available regardless of immigrant status. So that's available to you. If you can get their phone number, we'll connect them to those resources.
Le vamos a dar más información si usted nos deja su número de teléfono, porque tenemos una oficina especializada en dar contacto para los estudiantes que se pueden graduar con méritos y nosotros les damos apoyo. Denos por favor su número de teléfono.
And the next speakers are, and I was asked to say the names, Jessica Marroquin, Lucia Islas, y Angelo Solera.
Thank you.
Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Jessica Marroquín. Yo soy un trabajador de salud en el Centro Sol.
I'm a health worker at the Centro Sol.
Pero antes de estar de este lado, yo fui un miembro de la comunidad.
But before being here, I was member of community.
Y muchas veces no accedía a muchos recursos porque no entendían mi idioma, porque yo no hablaba inglés.
And many times I couldn't get any support because I was not getting in contact with them because I couldn't speak English.
Ahora que estoy de este lado, me doy cuenta de la oportunidad de que te hablen en español, que te entiendan, que te comprendan.
Now that I'm on this side, I realize the importance of speaking Spanish, and they understand you and they could support you.
En nuestras oficinas nos llaman miles de personas, miembros de la comunidad, los cuales nos vuelven a llamar por el hecho que nosotros les hablamos en español, les comprendemos y les conectamos con recursos que tanto ellos están necesitando.
At our offices, we get a lot of calls from people who request this kind of Spanish support. We connect them with resources that they are in need. And so many times, same at other places, we'll connect them with public organizations that are not able to speak Spanish, so that's why they don't get those services.
¿Por qué si mis hijos nacieron aquí y si yo pago mis impuestos y otros miembros de la comunidad también pagan sus impuestos, por qué es tan difícil acceder a estos servicios?
Why my kids were born here, they could not get the support other people receive? Why if we pay taxes, we cannot have those services from the same agencies, organizations, or government agencies that are supporting other communities?
¿Por qué es tan difícil que las organizaciones se equipen para prestar estos servicios a la comunidad, a los cuales necesitamos y tenemos derecho?
Why is so difficult that the organizations got that kind of services for us, and we have the right to have those services?
Hoy estoy aquí para pedir en nombre de mi comunidad que ustedes apoyen a las organizaciones para que ellos puedan tener los servicios que nosotros estamos necesitando en nuestro idioma.
Okay, I'm right here today to ask you for the support for the community because we need the support from you so that the public agencies support not only me but the whole communities.
Thank you.
Have access to their resources in our own language.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lucia Islas, and I am very proud to work with South CDC, an organization that for a lot of years has been taking care to ensure that its services are available in English and in Spanish, and provide the bilingual employees. As a case manager, I can give my testimony of how immigrants feel very comfortable to express themselves in their own language, whatever it may be. My experience helping my compatriots and others, it is very significant, and I would like to all agencies in Baltimore to deliver services in the many languages spoken in Baltimore. While I believe the Baltimore City agencies should hire more Spanish speakers, language is not the only barrier that our clients confront to connect it with services. Having bilingual staff alone doesn't solve issues of mistrust of government. Often clients tell us that they fear sharing information with a government agency. Also, it has been the experience of our clients that even when working with bilingual city employees, they do not always get the compassion and true help them deserve. It is important to build trust with clients, be empathetic to the family situation, and work with them passionately to connect them with the help that they need. Some benefit programs not managed by the city, for example, OHEP and SNAP, are managed by the state. Conduct much of the communication only in English. We help clients navigate these programs too. This is why it is very important for the government agencies to partner with nonprofit community-based organizations to provide the case management. Need to help immigrants communities navigate systems not to design to serve immigrants. Programs like the Baltimore New Americans Assets Coalition by MEMA, which supports nonprofit to provide case management to help not English speakers access important benefit programs are critical. We are very proud to be a part of that work. Lastly, we ask that you consider addressing systems that impact all not English speakers. Spanish is not the only language spoken by immigrants. Even within the Latino community, many speak indigenous languages like Quechua from Ecuador and Peru, Mixtec from Mexico, Quiche from Central America, and have limited Spanish proficiency. All immigrants who don't speak English deserve access to city agencies and benefit programs, regardless of whether or not there is some in the office who speak their language. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Angelo Solera. I'm the Executive Director of Nuestras Raíces, Inc., Our Roots. We are a 501c3 Hispanic Latino community-based cultural organization. We organize the famous Latino Parade of Nations in Highlandtown every year for the past 5 years. We support Councilwoman Odette Ramos for taking the initiative and the courage to introduce this very important bill. The issue for our community is not just about language access. It's about having representation in city government and its agencies. Representation matters because if we are not present, we are an afterthought. We are invisible. Without representation, our Latino community does not get the same services, benefits, and opportunities most Baltimoreans get. According to the US Census, the Hispanic Latino population in Baltimore City grew from 4% to 8% between 2010 and 2020. The numbers went from 26,000 to 46,000 in 10 years. Now, we know that the numbers of the census are not accurate, so probably the numbers are much higher than that. However, we have almost no representation in city government and its agencies. Thousands of Latinos go to work every day, pay taxes, contribute to the economy of the city, vote. However, we have almost no representation in city government and its agencies. For example, Latino students represent a total of 13% of the total student body population at the Baltimore City school systems. However, Latino teachers represent less than 1% of the teacher bodies at the Baltimore City school systems. That should be an outrage. Due to the lack of Latino teachers, thousands of US-born Latino children who are born in Baltimore go to school every single day without ever seeing a Latino teacher. That is unethical. That should be illegal. Baltimore City government and its agencies need to be more inclusive and diverse to ensure all Baltimoreans, including Latinos, get the same services, benefits, and opportunities as they are entitled by the law. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next three speakers are Kristen Topple, Wada Yan, and Mark Parker.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joyce Galber, and I'm actually speaking in place of Kristen this morning. My name is Joy. I'm a bilingual social worker as well as a community member. I live in District 13. I've worked as a bilingual service provider in various capacities in Baltimore City since 2014, as a volunteer at the Bayview Medical Center, as a social work intern with the newcomer support team in city schools, as well, and now as a social worker in East Baltimore. And I'm here today to share just what I've learned from my personal and professional experiences on the importance of bilingual staff in city government. The organization I work for, Hopkins Community Connection, is a program that screens patients and families for social needs as a part of their routine medical care appointments. We have specially trained volunteer advocates, community health workers, and case managers who navigate families to resources and programs in the community. In our work, we engage with a number of city and state agencies to help navigate public benefit assistance programs. And I just want to note that this does include local agencies like MOCFS for energy assistance programs, Water for All with DPW. We have over 130 student volunteers, and about 51 of them are bilingual. They speak Spanish and English. We support nearly 4,000 families in the city every year to navigate social needs, and about 30 to 40% of those do speak Spanish as their primary language in their home. I just want to note that our program has really observed the recent growth of the Spanish-speaking community in Baltimore. Since 2020, we've actually had to double the number of bilingual staff and volunteers we have in our program to meet the need, and just this past year, we saw a 4-fold increase in outreach from community members to our program. So just a couple things that we've noticed in our work is that there is a clear attributable difference in access based on language, since we work with a lot of English-speaking families as well as Spanish-speaking families. And our Spanish-speaking families really are not aware of some of the benefits that they might be eligible for. And when they do apply for these benefits, they tend to encounter more issues with their applications that are directly related to language or to maybe cultural misunderstandings. They miss deadlines because notices are sent in English rather than in Spanish, or they might be unable to dispute problems that arise when they're seeking assistance. When they try to reach out to these local agencies, they might encounter an operator where all the prompts are in English, making it difficult to navigate to the right department. Or even if the caller is able to indicate that they need a Spanish interpreter, the wait times tend to be much longer. Or we've also seen that calls are more likely to drop as representatives are trying to navigate adding an interpreter to the call. So what ends up happening is a lot of times these families call us back and our volunteers act as ad hoc interpreters during the calls. This also happens in person. We've had instances where families will go to a local agency, and when it's realized that they don't speak English, they're turned away, given a flyer or a blank application to fill out on their own. And again, our students then, our volunteers are stepping in as ad hoc interpreters. We'll have families give us a call, put us on speakerphone, and are interpreting conversation so that they can communicate the goal of their visit. So I'll wrap up here, and I just want to say that our families really ask us to provide help on a variety of issues that go beyond these public assistance programs. They're asking us to help them dispute an environmental citation they've received from DPW. They're asking us to educate them on tenant rights, helping them navigate school enrollment, a whole host of things that are managed at the city level. And we're regularly contacted by community members who are unaffiliated with our clinics because they've heard from their neighbors, friends, and family members that this is a place where you can get help in your language. All right, I'm wrapping up now. We're grateful to be able to support our Spanish-speaking neighbors, but recognize that acting as on-call ad hoc interpreters really limits our capacity as an organization to support more complex needs, and it severely limits the capacity of our limited English proficiency neighbors and their autonomy to be able to navigate these systems on their own. And they're very willing and very capable when they have adequate bilingual services available to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you like to submit your written testimony?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Julia Sarmiento. I'm representing Walda Young. She's my director. Good morning, council members. My name is Julia Sarmiento, and I am the Tenant Service and Eviction Prevention Program Manager at Latino Economic Development Center, overseeing the services in Baltimore City. I am grateful for the opportunity to testify before you today and ask for your support on passing this bill and talk about the importance of hiring more Spanish speakers for Baltimore City agencies. LEDC is a nonprofit organization where our mission is to drive the economic and social advancement of low to moderate income Latinos and other underserved communities by equipping them with the skills and tools to achieve financial independence and become leaders in their communities. For the past 30 years, LEDC has provided economic development services in underserved communities, serving over 4,000 individuals a year. I'm here today to ask for your support on the above-mentioned bill to help bring more Spanish speakers personnel to the various Baltimore City agencies that work to help low to moderate income families. In 2015, LEDC established an office in Baltimore City in response to the increasing need of the Latino community to receive services in their own language. LEDC expanded to Baltimore City to serve an ethnical, diverse community with our financial capabilities, rental and home buying counseling, micro-lending, and small businesses, technical assistance services. In the housing department, our work support low to moderate income families who are trying to prepare themselves to become homeowners or who are trying to avoid being evicted from their homes. Between 2021 and 2022, LEDC helped over 6,000 Baltimore City tenants, to which more than half were of Hispanic origin. The majority of the head of households do not speak English and depend on having their children interpret for them. LEDC has been able to help these families due to our staff being fully bilingual, but the work we do does not provide them with the final answer to their application. On a weekly basis, we receive calls from tenants requesting status on the emergency rental assistance application, which we can only provide what is on the portal. In previous months, we were informed by Community Action Partnership staff to direct tenants to the city line. LEDC staff has tested the number, and we have found that when we request to speak to a Spanish speaker, we are put on hold for over an hour until the phone call is disconnected. We have heard many of our clients complain about the services when they call Baltimore City government agencies. We have also heard from landlords who were in the process of obtaining a rental license, their struggles and frustrations in the process. They share with us that they try to complete the applications online, but the process seems confusing. And when they try to call, they would be put on hold for a long time. It was even more difficult for Spanish-speaking landlords who also need assistance with translation. I know this has been a long path for all CAP offices and the government agencies working to help Baltimore City residents, and I want to thank each one of the agencies and members of MEMA office for all the working efforts you have done and for allowing LEDC to play a role on those efforts. We know this work does not end here, and as the Latino community continues growing in Baltimore City, we want to be better prepared to help them feel welcome and that the Baltimore City is their new home. For this reason, I respectfully urge you to support this bill to help bring more Spanish speakers staff to Baltimore City government agencies to better serve the community. I would like to use this time to suggest more investment in creating job opportunities for bilingual members of the community to provide customer service in other languages, such as Spanish. Thank you.
Would you like to submit your written testimony? That's all right. We'll take it. Thank you.
Mark Parker.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Mark Parker. I serve as pastor of Breath of God Lutheran Church in Highland Sound for the last 14 years, and I'm glad to stand here today alongside my neighbors in advocating for the community and in listening and better understanding the needs of our neighbors, especially our Spanish-speaking neighbors. As a clergy person and as many others involved in community leadership, either on a personal level or a professional level, as social workers or housing counselors, many of us are comfortable in the position of kind of standing in the language gap, right? Of making sure that not only are we connecting folks as we do with people of all language backgrounds to necessary resources or putting our relationships to work to make sure that people receive the attention and services they need, but also to make sure that they're doing so in a way that that they can understand, right? And to use our language skills to stand in that gap and connect those resources. Having further capacity within city agencies themselves will help us to be more effective in that and better serving and providing for the needs of our neighbors. I do want to commend, in particular, lift up an incredibly important resource for this work, and that's the young people of our city, especially the young people that I've seen grow up over the last 14 years in Southeast Baltimore, whether through our own church programs or youth mentoring programs, through our local schools, and especially the really strong support they receive at Patterson High School, whether the programs like CASA's program for young people, or Central Souls program for young people, or Soccer Without Borders. There are young people who are bilingual, culturally competent, gifted, compassionate, and passionate about our city and its future, who are currently in college or out of college or in grad school, who have grown up here like I did, who love the city, and who could be great resources. I saw that firsthand during the pandemic. The health department in particular did a great job of employing those young adults as bilingual, culturally competent health navigators to spread information and make sure that people had access to resources, who knew what was available and could receive that life-saving and life-supporting help during that. I think that could be a key model. It gave a glimpse of what our city could be if it took those gifts of those young people even more seriously and provided opportunities and pathways through the Mayor Scholars Program and elsewhere to get those young folks to stay here and to build a life as public servants, as community leaders, whether inside the government or outside the government, and to really help them then be that next stage of building and supporting a community that truly serves people of a variety of cultural backgrounds and language needs. And so just want to lift up them, that work, that glimpse that we saw, and to say that I think there's a real resource there for us to draw on as we craft new policy to bring them into city government and to encourage their leadership more broadly in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next three speakers are Gary Ami, Pat Shannon Jones, and Carlos Orb Jr.
Can you still identify yourself before you speak also? Thank you.
Of course, Councilman Stokes. Good morning, everyone in the room, in the house. My name is Gary Aim. I am the President, Executive Director of a Haitian organization in Baltimore. I take proudly to address you all the importance of language access in Baltimore. And I want to just challenge the council, the whole house, is that I lived in Miami and Boston for about 20 years, 10 of each. And I lived in DC for a little bit. And I want to visualize the future of Baltimore, the beacon of a place that we want it to be. If you travel to DC, there's access to languages, cultures. Don't you all envision this for Baltimore? A couple years ago, Stephanie Rawlins Blakes had a vision. Other mayors also have the same vision, to repopulate Baltimore City. And the way we can do that is provide access to everyone that lives in Baltimore City, regardless where you come from school access, health care, regardless services. We need to do a better job, folks. And I know you all are politicians. You all present great speeches, but there are people behind me who want services. Eventually, you all have to provide those services. So as a Haitian organization in Baltimore City, I stand behind by my Latino brothers and sisters. Si puede. We can do this. So please challenge yourself from the school system, health care, provide the services that all of us need in Baltimore City. I stand proud when I visit Salisbury communities and I see those Haitians. By the way, folks, the Biden administration has lifted up Venezuela, the Haitian. They're all coming in Baltimore. So what are we going to provide them? Not just the language. So I'm not here to basically preach to you all, but I'm advocating on behalf of all politicians and all services to help Baltimore to become the beacon of a place that we want it to be. Each time when I drive around, there's a stop sign that says, "We believe in Baltimore." So I challenge all of you, believe in the city, that we all want to be the best city in the northeast of Baltimore, northeast, the mid-Atlantic. I lift up the MIMA organization. I also lift up Nuestros Latino, Comité Latino, all of them. They're doing wonderful work. The churches, the nonprofits. So match our energy and provide those services to the beautiful city of Baltimore City. My Latino brothers and sisters, I am with you. My African American brothers and sisters, I'm with you. Asian, Korean. There's a large South Asian community in Baltimore. Let's lift up those people so become the great city of Baltimore City. And thank you. I appreciate all your services.
Thank you, sir. And I agree with you 100%. We have to provide service and language barriers that here in Baltimore for all Latinos, everybody, not just one segment of the city. And that'll be a better communication for not just us, but for the community itself. So thank you for those words. Appreciate it.
Good morning. I guess it's still morning, Mr. Chair. And Councilwoman Ramos, as well as the City Council members here, the committee members. I'm Pat Shannon Jones. I'm Executive Director of the Immigration Outreach Service Center. And I'm going to take some of the things that have been alluded to and go to like the next step. The IOSC, the Immigration Outreach Service Center, was started in 2000 and conducts educational programs, immigration legal consults, aid to clients, and makes many referrals to city services. The IOSC was started by a church community whose people are from 23 countries. Today, that church has people from 45 countries, and the IOSC has served people from 123 countries. 123. How many languages do you think we need to speak to our clients? I applaud the work that's being done here, and I thank all those who have testified about the difficulties they have faced. But I want us also to realize, how many languages do you think we need to speak to our clients? It isn't just English and Spanish. We have to start somewhere. I applaud that. But we need to implement other languages for services in agency offices to help people access those services. We need, and people have mentioned them, we need French, we need Swahili, we need Mandarin, we need Korean, Dari, Pashto, Arabic, and Ukrainian. Yes, Ukrainian. We've already seen immigrants from Ukraine. We need these to make Baltimore a welcoming city for refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants. We must find a way for them to cross the language divide. It's a winning situation. It's a win-win for us. The city must find translation services and translators for all our city offices to assist all of our immigrants, so they will choose to stay, to help grow our workforces, build our vibrant communities, and make our city stronger. The time has come. And to give you some of the languages, thank you, merci, gracias, asante, danyabat, shukran. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carlos Orb Jr. Susan Barrios.
Good morning. My name is Susana Barrios, and from March 2021 until December 2022, I was a vaccine ambassador. I was a contractor for Baltimore City Health System. My job was originally to give information about the vaccine, but it evolved to us being interpreters at vaccine clinics, and we were the bridge. We were the bridge that was able to reach a lot of people, and thanks to, I believe, the work that our group did, we were able to reach 80% of the Hispanic population really early on, before the rest of the other demographics in Baltimore City. And I think that was proof of what the benefits of having people that speak other languages. Now, some of the things that I encountered people that didn't speak Spanish or English. One time I spent an hour and a half registering 2 people that spoke Lao. Then the health department, through MEMA, also got an app that we could also work with other people. So that was really helpful, because I encountered people from Afghanistan, Ukraine, other languages that, even though I was bilingual, I could not help them. So one of the issues that I found was, even though people had the app and had been trained, they refused to use the app because it was inconvenient, right? So I think that we also need to remind, while I hear a lot of the agencies here say they have the language access line available, it's not being used, and I think staff needs to be trained on how, not only trained on how to be used, but also reminded that by law, you have to, under Title VI, you have to provide interpretation. So one of the advantages of hiring staff that is bilingual, not only in Spanish, in other languages, is you will not find yourself in the situation where you say that hiring an interpreter is not cost effective, because you have somebody on your staff that you will not need you will not find the need to have that person. The other thing that I think that we need to do is create a program, like Pastor Mark Parker said, create a program where we have homegrown people. There's a lot of people that are so talented, but nobody has told them you have those gifts of being bilingual. They're not even bilingual, they're biliterate. They can read, write, and speak Spanish and English, right? So why are we not harvesting those children? Why are we not having some kind of training? So in the program, in the Vaccine Ambassadors, we train teenagers for those 2 years. And a lot of the people were really young, no experience, but Hopkins gave them the training. So I think starting even in middle school, high school, have a program that starts training them and give them some incentives so that they will want to work for the city when they graduate. Thank you. And I do not have it in writing because I just winged it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
And the last speaker that signed up on these sheets is Maria Marroquin. Marroquin.
Now we're going to look at take online testimony. There are people online who would like to testify. So if you're online, could you use the raise hand function to indicate that you would like to testify? There's been some great conversation in the chat, and we'd love to hear. Not everybody is seeing the chat, so it would be great to hear your thoughts. So Marguerite will call your name and unmute you, and then you will be able to speak.
The first speaker will be Cecilia Rog. Last name Gonzalez, and after her will be Ricardo.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is
Yep.
great. My name is Cecilia Gonzalez, and I'm here to speak on my own behalf as an immigrant, but also as a highly engaged resident. But I would like to draw my experience in various areas of involvement as a community design fellow with the Department of Planning and also as a community organizer in Southwest Baltimore. So with a growing Hispanic and immigrant population that contributes so much to the life and progress of our city, there is a huge need for city agencies to invest in providing services, platforms, and outreach in Spanish or the appropriate languages for the immigrant community. More people with language and cultural competency should be hired and trained to provide high-quality services. As Community Design Fellow at the Department of Planning, I believe I'm the only native speaker at the agency. I have had the chance to hear some of the needs of the community, for example, in affordable housing, and they are very different than the rest of the population. And so without the ability to include their voices and input into the process, the comprehensive plan that will shape Baltimore City for the next decade or and beyond will be incomplete. So I would like to ask that please invest not only in hiring more staff by considering the Hispanic and immigrant population in all the systems and processes of the city. I would even go as far as to say that Spanish should be an official language, given that in the United States, about one out of 5 people are of Hispanic descent, and the Hispanic population has doubled in Baltimore City since the last census. We need to understand that this is not only a matter of communications, but also a matter of cultural understanding. An example of this lack of investment and understanding is the decision of city schools to close our neighborhood school, Stuart Hill Academic Academy, in an area with a growing Hispanic population. We will be losing a good school with an ESOL program because of their bad policies and processes that fail to engage our community and understand the needs of our community. Representation matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ricardo.
Hi.
Go ahead.
We can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am Carlos Ricardo Ortiz, a resident of District 6 and a member of the MIMA Community Advisory Board, and I was also part of the Human Services Committee and the transition team of Mayors Brandon Scott and I am here to give my personal testimony. And I would like to begin by thanking you, Councilwoman Odette Ramos, for promoting this initiative. This is the first example of why it is so essential to have people who understand the language, culture, and needs of the community. This is the first time in the city that we, the Latino community, have a voice in the city council. I am not sure if we will be having this conversation without having this voice, the voice of the councilwoman. Like many testimonials, I have had the terrible experience of calling 311 to report a water leak in my neighborhood or any issue. And the moment I ask for support in Spanish, they hang up on me. But I want to focus my words on the recommendation we made as the Human Services Committee on Mayor Brandon Scott transitions team. For the first year, the recommendation number 3 was guarantee equitable language access throughout city government, including buildings and agencies. Require all people serving agencies to develop public plans and budget requests that address language interpretation and communication services for and with Baltimore residents who have a limited English proficiency. The recommendation number 12 was require the Department of Human Resources to analyze employment trends and inequalities within city government's hiring practices. Those recommendations were made in 2021, and it is time to step up. It is a reality that Spanish is the second most spoken language in the country, and in Baltimore City, we continue to grow up. We have the opportunity to move forward, but we need funds and laws that guarantee this. I concluded by sharing an experience with a school in Northwest Baltimore, where more than 50% of the students identified themselves as Latino. But for a long time, there was no a single person to support the Spanish-speaking parents. For several years, there had been cases of student-on-student violence, racism, and discrimination. After we organized and made these cases visible, there were changes, and now they are people committed to the cause, and the change in the school are so visible. More and more parents are collaborating and participating in the school's activities. So if we want to repeat this in our city, it is time to act. Thank you for all your work and support. Gracias y sí se puede.
Gina, last name Baez.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gina Baez, and I work for the Baltimore City Health Department for the last 20 years, going on 21. So working always with the Latino community, at first in youth programs, and currently as a family planning manager for a clinic, one of the 2 clinics that the health department runs. And I have seen firsthand how important it is to provide the services in the language that where the client understands. We have been able to build a team, an almost 100 bilingual team at the site where I work, and we can see it reflected in the almost 95% of Latina women that come to our clinic. 95% of our clients require the services in Spanish, and we are able to serve it. They come to us because they feel safe. They feel like for once, they're not gonna have to struggle to be understood. So, because I'm one of the few bilingual staff in the health department, I'm often informally asked to help recruit bilingual staff. And many times I talk to people, great potential candidates, bilingual candidates, and when I tell them, first of all, the starting salaries, I realize that we are competing with other organizations that provide differentials and that are snatching the best candidates because, to get qualified candidates, we need investment. We need also sometimes assistance with the application process. We need buy-in from inside the organizations because as much as I love our team in the family planning clinic, there are other teams that are still resistant to change, teams that do not want to use a language line, that hang up on Spanish-speaking clients, and we have a long way to go to comply with federal mandates, but slowly with training and with hand-in-hand working with Latino leaders that are here and that attend these meetings, we are willing to assist, but we need the investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to submit your written testimony? Okay, thank you. This concludes the public testimony, but I just want to say here in
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I wanted
It's
to
all
say
right.
this before because I know some people are leaving. At the beginning, when I was talking about our bill report, I noted that we have mobile career navigation services. I want to emphasize this because many people that are familiar with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, they're familiar with our brick and mortar center model. They know we have physical centers where people can come in to receive services. This is not unique to Baltimore City. This is required by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It is important because we know a lot of customers do like to come in and receive services in person. However, whether a person is proficient in English or not, we also know that a lot of people are not comfortable coming into a government building. And what is unique to Baltimore is that we have created a hub model. We do have MOED staff that are located in nonprofit organizations that are embedded with those organizations, and people can come into their community to receive services. Hopefully in the future, we can come back and say for certain that we have solidified our next hub. We are in negotiations with the IRC, which is very important. So in addition to our hub model, we also have our mobile navigation model. As I mentioned before, our new mobile navigator, she is bilingual in Spanish and English. She's in the process of doing outreach to different organizations. I have a list here of who she's reaching out to, but I want to make sure if there are any other organizations that want to connect with her, she will be available to come physically to your organization. She will be available if you are having events to come to your events. She will be available if you have a customer specifically that you want her to meet with, whether it's in a coffee shop in her community or at your place of business. She will be available to offer those workforce services to that customer. Addition, getting a little lengthy here, but I want to note that we know a lot of people that are coming in for workforce services, oftentimes they don't realize that they need other services. We are working on a project now for the last couple of years called Access Points, where if someone comes to us and they need additional services in childcare, transportation, or housing, we will refer them in our Access Point Unite Us network to other services. So I will be available after the hearing to make sure you are on this list, and our mobile navigator will reach out to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now this do conclude the, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one final comment. Spanish-speaking staff, bilingual staff is part of a broader strategy to overcoming language barriers. As it was mentioned earlier, Spanish is not the only language. We would be happy to discuss efforts around language access, which I think has been coming on over and over during the hearing. We'll be happy to share our efforts, so I welcome a future hearing where we can discuss that at length.
Thank you so much. This concludes the public testimony, but before we conclude, I just want to say the city, if we're going to grow the city, there's not just Spanish that we have a gap in communication. All languages here in the city, a lot of people moving to the city, so we as a city have a long way to go in connecting those barriers that not just in the Spanish community, but all the languages here in the city. Because if we all communicate, this city will really grow and really be the melting pot that it is right now. So before we recess this hearing, the sponsor of this hearing, Councilwoman Odette Ramos, I want to say some words.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank my colleagues here for their amazing questions, and in side conversations, have really recommitted to making sure that we are continuing these conversations, holding our agencies accountable, and bringing more agencies before us to have these conversations, which is why we're recessing, and we will come back asking the hospitals, Children, Youth, and Families, and a few other agencies to join us because there's still so much work to do. And so I'm grateful for the commitment of Mr. Chair and my colleagues to help move this forward. I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank Yaslin from my office for coordinating all of the translation services and also the Council President's office. And, you know, this is important, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I also want to thank the city agencies and those persons who came here and testified, whether in person or online. Because I'm going to tell you, I learned a lot. I didn't know we have these kind of gaps in communication here in the city. And it's just not Spanish, but it's all languages. So I received my 101 class today. And that's why we're going to make sure we recess this, because it's a lot of more work we need to do here in the city. So thank you again.
Thank you.